Hello, everyone. And my name is Rachel Serwetz, and I'm the CEO of Woken. And we are here with Kate, and we are going to just demystify some topics around AI today so that all you job seekers or just professionals in the workforce can feel a little better about what's AI and what does it mean for my job. So, Kate, please tell us a little bit about who you are before we dive into the chat today.
Absolutely. My name is Kate Fraim Kight. I am a freelance web designer and developer with a background in IT services, and I'm also a photographer and artist on the side. So AI really sits right in the intersection of everything I do.
Amazing. I love it. And Kate's been working with us, and I can see how technical she is. So it'll be great to just learn from her today. So, what is AI and why is it everywhere right now?
Yeah, it's really interesting from a computer science perspective. AI has been with us for a really long time. The concept of artificial intelligence, the idea that a machine can make decisions the way a human brain does, is something that was thought of when people were first developing computers. It was really the kind of driving force behind, can we get machines to take some of this work off of our hand? When you think about, the hidden figures and the work that computers were doing back in the early days, they were doing large scale computations by hand to send people to the moon. It's great that we have computers now that can take some of that. So we're really seeing a natural progression of the concepts behind computer science here. But the field of AI is really broad, right? Artificial intelligence is just a catch-all term for how computers could possibly make decisions, one of the many ways they can. And there's lots of different subsets of that. And the one that's popping up right now that's getting all of the buzz is something called machine learning. Machine learning and natural language processing is all sorts of different terms for it. But the idea is one of the ways that computers can start to think like people is by showing them how people think for with a ton of data. Then so your chat GPTs and any of those kind of chatbot style AIs, they think and talk with us because they have been exposed to millions and millions and millions of pieces of data that show how the human brain processes information with instructions that say, learn from this and then try to be like it. And so the reason that it's popping up right now is, this concept is something that's been around for a really long time. The only difference is processing power. It takes a ton of energy, ton of processing power, really high-end computers to be able to make these kinds of AIs function, to be able to train them. So that's really why it's popping up right now. And then the more polarizing pieces of it are when we're training AI, uh, whose data is being consumed, who is getting to be a part of the learning process, and is that something that those artists, those writers wanted? And that's a really fair question to dig into.
Yeah, absolutely. Should we be nervous about any of this? I mean, you're sort of hinting at it. There's data being used, and where is that all coming from? How is it affecting jobs? Like, yeah, what do we need to be aware of, maybe nervous about, not nervous about?
So I think there's a macro and a micro piece to that, right? On the day-to-day individual level, is AI coming for my job? No more than, if your main job was emailing back and forth and then all of a sudden Slack showed up, is Slack coming from your job? Sure, in some ways, right? It's going to change your job. You have to be willing to learn a different way of communicating, a different tool to integrate into the tools that you're already using in order to continue to perform well at your job. That's not really the same thing as it taking your job, right? Progress will continue to go forth and make everything we do, often really quickly, change for those of us that are working in technical or even technical adjacent fields. But I don't think the future that we need to worry about is one in which all of a sudden all photographers, artists, and writers are going to be gone. While their AI does keep getting slightly better, if anyone has spent a little bit of time playing around with those generating art tools, not great. I mean, maybe on par with some of your low level rom coms that you see on the late night channels, but they're not great. Um, so I really think it's important to be comfortable with these concepts. That's the biggest danger I see on an individual level, is letting these sort of clickbait pieces and the fear inspire us to say, oh my gosh, AI is coming for my job. I should completely pivot or learn a completely new skill set or just give up. Um, it's the same thing as any new software or suite of tools. Learn enough about it that you feel comfortable knowing how to answer questions, knowing what tool to pick in the right situation, and be willing to adapt and learn. And that's the biggest, be comfortable with change. And that's, I think that's a mindset that is going to work for anybody, whether you're in a technical field or not at all.
Yeah.
Being comfortable with adapting and talking about it and not letting the fear get to you. On the macro level, I do get a little bit more nervous. Again, not from a um, the robots are going to take over and come for us, and we're going to live in a dystopian society by campfires while they reign above us. I think the things that make me nervous about AI are far more boring and far more sinister than that. When we go back to talking about whose data is being used to train these large language learning models, these neural networks, and who wants to use them, I don't see this as there's going to be a sudden spark of intelligence and gunfire everywhere. These tools are giving people who already had a certain mindset and a certain goal more power to quickly accelerate that. I don't think the danger comes from AI. The danger comes from the CEO who says, I want to make the most profit possible, and I barely even care how good my product is. It comes from, the managers who say, I want everyone working harder, and great, I don't have to give AI a lunch break. That change isn't going to happen overnight. AI isn't suddenly going to be able to replace everyone, but giving power to that mindset and giving power to say, we can start having conversations about replacing robots with people. Those who already have the mindset that they don't have to treat their workers great, that it would be easier and cheaper and make them more profit to work, to employ robots. That's what makes me nervous, because we need to continue to ensure that managers and CEOs know that profit isn't always the highest good, that workers are people, and that the creativity that allowed us to come up with these ideas to create AI, that allows us to continue to exercise human judgment that will always be superior to AI, that is worth protecting and worth investing in. And a future in which we're using AI that has been designed by and for a certain set of the population, that look, when you plug in, show me a picture of a doctor, and only pictures of old white men appear, that's a society that's going to worsen your already existing flaws that are purely human and purely baked into how our society has been set up. So I think continuing to ensure that the spark of human creativity, that and the spark of caring for each other and caring for a world that isn't just about work, but where work is something that we use in order to build stronger communities. AI can help with that if we're willing to invest it and use it as a tool to do so.
I completely agree. And yeah, I think the point you're making is huge, which is just it is how we choose to use it. And so I think for somebody in their job, I agree with you. It's you want to become aware and the expert of the different AI tools that can affect your role, your function, your field, your industry, so that you are the go-to person where people ask you, should we use this tool, or how should we use this tool? Or if you do start using it, have that ethics and the oversight, and maybe you influence or persuade your CEO whether to use it or to not, or how. And so if you're in the weeds and you're in the infiltrated behind the scenes, making sure things are running well, if these tools are going to be incorporated, I think your knowledge and expertise to be able to manage, oversee, decide, strategize how these tools come into play, to me, is what's going to make somebody stay in the job and be able to
Exactly.
use these or decide how and if to. So yeah, I mean, I think we're alluding to this already, but is there anything else we haven't mentioned yet of how people can use AI in and out of the tech field to get ahead in their work? I mean, I've got the overlay of how I think somebody should think about it, but is there anything we haven't mentioned
Right.
already that people can be aware of?
I think you being comfortable with knowing the limitations and what um, what's going to work as promised versus not, as this continues to get a lot of buzz. And you'll see ads. I mean, I see it all the time with clients who are like, can we try this tool? Can we pivot and try this tool? And to your point that you were just making earlier, having enough awareness, you don't have to be an expert on how to build a neural network. You don't have to be an algorithmic expert. Just like you don't have to know how email works under the hood to know sometimes we should use Slack and sometimes we should use email. Knowing what's going to actually save your company time, knowing what's actually going to save your job time versus what is going to be unlikely to produce great results, that's going to be a super useful way to know what's worth investing in, to know how to stop if you happen to have a boss or a client who gets really excited by a shiny new tool. We all have them and we love them because there can be great things that come from getting excited about progress in technology. But there's also a lot of stuff out there that's not as good as people make it out to be, and that sometimes doing things by hand or finding an artist or finding a writer is just as valuable as doing something efficiently. So being really comfortable with that decision-making process, even if you don't have all of the technical skills to do. And I think that's interesting, right? Because this is something that we talk about from that I'm really familiar with from my artwork and photography side, where there are times you need to invest in a full photo shoot and all the props and all of the lighting, and it's super expensive, and you get a bunch of great photos. And there are times where you just need to use stock photography. Those kinds of decisions are a huge part of how to make businesses work or not work. And it's the same type of decision making process, regardless of how complex the technical tool is. So just knowing what's going to work for your industry and your job, and being comfortable saying, we're going to try it until this point, and then we're going to move on, or we're ready to invest and figure out how this is going to work. Let's make sure we have people that we trust to be able to build this ethically and efficiently.
Right. And I think a lot of these tools can save you time and help you to, brainstorm or synthesize information. And there's definitely use
Mhm.
cases. But I
Absolutely.
like to use it as an idea generator. It's not your only idea generator, but can you build it for functionality and actually use it behind the scenes to build a chatbot? Or do you use the chatbot to help you in your everyday job? Depending on your function and what you want these tools to do, they can enhance or advance or facilitate progress and efficiency, but they don't necessarily have to be the end all be all. But yeah, there's a lot of use cases, and I think the goal here is just understand how, if, when, and where it could affect your field. You don't have to run for the hills, but rising to the awareness of it, the education around it, and feeling the control and the oversight of what these things are, how and when to plug them in. To me, that strategic advisory is how you're gonna, improve your personal brand in this new day and age of technology. So I think seeing it that way can help people. Like, for example, for me with career coaching, people are like, oh, should I be using these chat tools for a resume or for, a cover letter? It's my job to know how to advise somebody where that may or may not actually help them. And so at first glance, you may think that these tools can help you in your job search, but then we see all the backfire of, oh, we know when a resume or a cover letter is written by, so not everything, you really want to understand pros and cons. And when you're the one
Yeah.
behind the scenes in the job, doing the building of career coaching tools or doing the building of marketing and copywriting or whatever your job is, just understanding what tools can help me, how, why, when, if should we use it. To me, that decision making, if you're in an interview and you can show up as that person who understands it, to me, that's the valuable person in today's day and age when there's so much unknown and so much new coming out. I think people want to know their teammate can help make good decisions forward. It seems shiny at first, but is it, like you said, is it the
Mhm.
most strategic tool for the end user? Profit is the shiny object, but
Exactly.
indirect potential future impacts, you really want to think about your brand and what are we going to do here and why, and should we, shouldn't we? So I think as long as you can question all that, that's kind of the goal right
Mhm.
now, as far as I see it.
Absolutely. I think uh, whether you're dealing with AI or a software, or really any sort of decision in which we're balancing long-term, longevity and impact, uh, there's there's no easy button, and a lot of the world that we live in and the structures kind of push us towards this idea of if we can just find how to do things faster and easier, then that takes the burden off us and we can make more money with less time. But that's almost never how our society functions and how we function individually. So if you found an easy button, if something seems like this is going to take a ton of time off and make life more efficient, there's labor going in somewhere. Where is that labor going in? Is it going in at the front end? Is it going in the, are you paying it forward or paying it back? Or is someone else bearing that cost? And being able to answer that question and comfortably just approach it with curiosity and non-judgment and figure out what worked for you, that's the strategic thinking framework, the creativity that is going to help you succeed regardless of what tool you use. And I think it's going to make for a better society and a more interesting and creative and diverse economy moving forward if we can all ask those questions about all the tools we're using.
Totally. Yeah. And I think, just to make it ultra clear for people as well, I see tools where it can be, client facing, right? Like you might, like I might have clients that are using ChatGPT. And then I see tools where it's behind the scenes. Like I might use this to build out my technology and the behind the scenes of how it functions or how it produces results. Can it advance and automate things like that for better or worse? So, I mean, those are the two ways that I think about it. And I think it would depend. Oh, and then I guess the other way, right? The third way is to just do your job better. Like, so for me, if I'm trying to think of ideas or whatever it may be, it's like, just helping me in my day-to-day functions, projects to brainstorm more quickly or come up with a title for a workshop, so it's like, it's throughout your day, it's client facing, it's behind the scenes when you build tools. I mean, those are the use cases. I mean, am I missing anything from your perspective of kind of also like, how is this really playing out in the real world today and how people are incorporating it?
Yeah, I think I love thinking about ChatGPT as like my accountability buddy. Like I'm an external processor, so having something to talk to that doesn't get irritated when I get really distracted or go on and on for a long time is very helpful. It's someone to just process with is great. I think when we get thinking about especially sort of building behind the scenes, one of the um, exciting things for folks, especially who are trying to break into tech, is how helpful ChatGPT can be in helping you break down code and figuring out how to build uh, in different languages, which is fantastic because I love seeing that just become more accessible and clear to people. I think when we're talking about uh, AI and machine learning on really large scales, when we're looking at IBM's Watson or some of I think that the other piece is like enterprise level. Folks you can build your own neural networks, right? You can build your own machine learning, and there's all sorts of really interesting work happening in big tech on who's gonna ChatGPT and OpenAI came in and shocked everyone with how market ready their product was really, and they're light years ahead. And obviously there has been some interesting human politics happening around OpenAI and where that is heading. But thinking about like on this enterprise level, where computer scientists are building these private AIs that will propel their businesses forward. Again, you don't have to know the algorithms. You don't have to be a CTO to be able to break it down and be aware. But I think it's really important that we're all at least aware that that's happening, and that the way that we're using this on a day to day can be helpful, can be make routine tasks easier and make our lives easier in small ways. And that doesn't necessarily translate to what's happening on the big tech level, and being at least aware of there's a whole bunch of data and a whole bunch of work that's happening. If Google comes out and continues to propel their AI forward, and Amazon comes out with one, again, I think that's where we really do want to reserve our energy for questioning ethics and questioning what's happening under the hood, right? OpenAI has opened the the history of the internet is built on community and open source work and people sharing their work, and wanting the world to be more connected. That would be the biggest thing we stand to lose, is that history of sharing things because we want the world to be more connected. And I hope that we continue to see open source work be prioritized, over profit making and keeping things behind closed doors. So again, like even if you just want to use GPT or any of these tools for the heck of it, I think that's it's good to do. Have fun, play around with it, just so that all of us can be a little bit aware of what's going on, how these things could function, so that if the world continues to progress towards a future where this is underpinning a lot of our day-to-day activities, we're aware when things are happening and why, so that we can ask the right questions at the right time.
Yeah, and it is important to remember, as much as we don't need to be the technical expert, it is the type of thing where we're using something or want to use something. And there is a question of how was this built from the get-go? If it's going to produce some output, I think we are all starting to become trained like a technologist in some way. I mean, we're coming to the point where if AI is going to affect your job, or you are going to be aware of it, you can ask those right questions. But it's not just what does this do, how and when and why should we use it. I mean, it does sort of beg the question of how was this built, and thus should we use it, or should we alter it, or should we make our own, or
Yeah.
and so I think we
Right.
are eventually all sort of coming to think about what is the source of the data and things like that. And when you talk about ethics, so yeah, I think as long as we are staying all very curious and open-minded, that's the key. So instead of worrying about the AI, see it as, we talk about lifelong learning, and that just used to mean go learn a new tool for marketing, and this is the new tool, but it's not like a new CRM like HubSpot or Salesforce.
Right.
This is feeling more advanced, but just see it like another thing to try to understand, whether whatever your role or industry is, this is the next age of learning. And so the more you can just understand it, the more you'll still be in demand at your job. That's the irony there. So for the sake of
Exactly.
time, let's pause here, and I'm sure there's so much more, and I'm thinking about all the rest of what we should talk about. But Kate, how can people find you if they want to reach out and learn more?
Yeah, you can find me on my website, katekite.com. My email is on there, and I am on Instagram at flyakite379. You'll also find a lot about wine and the wine industry, which does have some really interesting integrations with AI. So if you want to learn more about how we are using computers to analyze why wine tastes like it does, give me a follow there.
Amazing. And of course, you can find us at iamwoken.com to help you with your career. And our goal is that, AI or other career topics aren't stressful, but rather we can, somehow navigate all this new information. And we're here to help you with that. So stay tuned. I'm sure we'll be back for more, and hope you enjoyed this.